AEW is reportedly doing a brand split. We've been talking about it for a minute, but now we got some major details. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit, plus some big surprises that AEW could have planned. I want to kick things off with a WWE story, but as always, we'll have timestamps in the description down below. Triple H made an announcement at the Backlash press conference, and this is generating a ton of conversation on social media. For some reason, wrestling fans are throwing logic out the window. It's actually quite simple to digest and to understand. For those who missed it, Triple H announced that the World Heavyweight Championship finals at Night of Champions will include a finalist from SmackDown and a finalist from Raw. Now, I'm going to break this down for you guys, hopefully in the most simplest ways, and hopefully you'll have an understanding of where I'm coming from. If you disagree, that's completely fine, but I'm going to try to bring some logic to this. Perhaps WWE could have done a better job explaining this, but they chose not to. So Triple H announced at the press conference that WWE Raw will have 2 triple threat matches with the winners facing each other on the same night, and SmackDown will have 2 triple threat matches with the winners facing each other at the same night. The person that wins at the end of the night for Raw and SmackDown will then go on to Night of Champions to compete against each other. Now, to remind you, when Triple H announced the World Heavyweight Championship, he announced that the belt was created because Roman Reigns' new contract basically allowed him to have fewer title defenses, meaning Roman Reigns wasn't a fighting champion. Now, prior to the draft, when this announcement was made, it was very clear that WWE found themselves in a situation where SmackDown wrestlers aren't being given the same opportunity as Raw wrestlers because they were drafted to SmackDown, where Roman Reigns holds their world title. So it only makes sense that, logically speaking, WWE will give both parties an opportunity to become a champion. Now, with that being said, it doesn't guarantee a SmackDown guy will win the World Heavyweight Championship. And 2, for some reason, a lot of people can't seem to understand this part, but just because a SmackDown guy, if he were to win, doesn't necessarily mean he would be coming back to SmackDown with the World Heavyweight Championship. He would be transferring to WWE Raw as a full-time athlete. Now, I see people on Twitter saying, well, that just makes the WWE draft pointless. Sure, I think that could be valid if you believe that. But then that would also be no different than Cody Rhodes going into the Royal Rumble as a Raw superstar, winning the Royal Rumble and saying, well, I want the Roman Reigns Universal Undisputed Championship belt, right? Because at the end of the day, that's a transfer. Now, WWE has told us ahead of time that there would be transfers. And Michael Cole also alluded to this on SmackDown the week prior. So I don't think this is actually complicated to digest. I don't think there's anything illogical about it. WWE is, 1, not guaranteeing you that a SmackDown person is winning. And 2, WWE having a SmackDown compete for the World Heavyweight Championship could actually be a good idea. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be Edge. I'm not saying it's going to be I'm not saying it's Lashley. I don't know who it's going to be. I genuinely don't know who it's going to be. But SmackDown has some credible names. Everybody was complaining a week ago that SmackDown was super lopsided with the draft. Now WWE is bringing in the opportunity for one of them to potentially go back to Raw. If Edge were to win the World Heavyweight Championship, I don't know if the World Heavyweight Championship necessarily looks like a consolation prize. I'm just throwing out examples and hypotheticals, but my point that I'm making is that this really isn't a complicated issue. I do agree that the WWE draft should have been better. I've been complaining about that for a while now, but I think at the end of the day, this specific announcement is actually quite logical, and it doesn't mean the draft is pointless because transfers are bound to happen, and we're going to see 6-7 months from now, people will get not drafted, but they'll get transferred and traded. It's a really simple situation, and I hope that kind of gives you a little bit more clarification on it. Guys, I want to talk to you a little bit about some really big stuff happening with AEW Rampage because there's a new report that's come out, and quite honestly, I just don't know how I feel about this. But basically, Dark and Dark Elevation are gone, right? Warner Bros. Discovery, they want AEW content exclusively. Now, if we take what Dave Meltzer is saying for truth, this could be a very interesting decision for AEW, especially considering the time slot. But essentially, Rampage would be expected to be what AEW Dark and Dark Elevation is. And I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this, quite honestly, because Dave Meltzer said it's basically to turn Rampage into what Dark and Elevation were. This is designed more to showcase younger talent. I'm all for them using a show to platform, the younger talent and the guys coming up. especially at the 10 p.m. time slot. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't have an issue with that. But the choice of words here, Dark and Dark Elevation were shows that padded records, and there was a lot of unsigned talent being used on those shows. So if this is going to be what Rampage is, then Rampage is clearly going to become the C show, and it's going to become the show where maybe not much of importance is actually happening. Now, just a quick reminder, in 2022, most of the year, when I wasn't enjoying Dynamite, I talked about how Rampage actually had a lot of continuity within their storylines. Just in case if you don't remember that, I've always been on board with Rampage. So I don't know exactly how I'm going to feel about Rampage becoming the C show with meaningless matches, if this is in fact true, but it does maybe give me a reason to look forward to AEW Collision, which could potentially become the the B show. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment, because before we could get to the brand split stuff, we got to talk about some big surprises for AEW, and it starts with the firm deletion. I think this is cool stuff. I know a lot of people in the AEW fan base that I talk to probably won't enjoy this, but there's been a lot of stuff being teased. Matt Hardy's talking about the firm deletion on his podcast, and for those who don't know, this is basically a cinematic match that AEW has done with the firm deletion, which is basically we're going to see some insane stuff. It's going to be taking place at the Hardy compound. It might take place elsewhere, but Matt Hardy was talking about this, and he actually says we're going to see a lot of violence in pro wrestling. And then obviously, you know, they got stuff with Stokely Hathaway. So this is definitely going to be a match filled with comedy. This is going to be a match filled with surprises. And for anybody who knows how AEW is with the firm and Matt Hardy stuff, it just seems like Tony Khan is kind of giving them the creative reins to do this, right? And basically Matt Hardy's hyping this up. He's hyping up the surprises. He's hyping up everything about this. And just historically speaking, anytime we've ever seen one of these final deletions, cinematic matches, whatever, anything we see at the Hardy compound typically leads to surprise appearances. And I would not be shocked whatsoever if we get some really good ones on this. And you know, honestly, I give them props, because this storyline actually started on Dark, and it made its way to TV. So I'm actually excited about this. I know some people might not be into this type of stuff. I've also really liked what AEW did this past week at the farm with Satnam Singh and Sanjay Dutt and Mark Briscoe. I thought that was really cool. I like having that element of stuff on AEW television. So if you guys are in for a night with surprises, this is definitely one to pay attention to. And now it brings us to our final story of today's video, guys. Tony Khan, AEW brand split. Obviously, you know, a lot of people are criticizing WWE for their brand split. I'm curious to see what people think about AEW's brand split. And again, we could only take this with a grain of salt, because as you know, when it comes to the reports of CM Punk and everything that's happened with the Elite and CM Punk, I've been pretty much on record where I think it's a work. And I don't think a lot of this stuff that's been reported is accurate. I don't. I genuinely don't. I think I take a lot of this stuff with a grain of salt. But of course, Meltzer had said that the updated plan for this brand split, and this will possibly change a few times, is that there will be less of a hard roster split as previously told to people who do know about it. The thought is that the split will not be hard at all with the women, as they don't believe there is enough star power to do a hard split. The plan is still for Punk to be the star of Collision most weeks, but he will also be at Dynamite at times when needed. AEW plans to have those who have issues with Punk on Collision when Punk is not at Dynamite. Or I'm sorry, when Punk is at Dynamite, so this way they can avoid any issues, but obviously they haven't fixed any of their issues. As far as a brand split goes, if you're going to do a brand split, do a brand split. If you want to do transfers from time to time or trades from time to time, I'm cool with it. But if your women aren't going to be part of the brand split, if CM Punk's not really going to be a part of a brand split, I don't think that's really a brand split. I don't. I think if you're going to have people that have issues with each other not work with each other, and then your solution is a brand split, but then you're not actually separating them, I don't think any of that actually makes sense. And to me, it's just kind of disappointing. I want to know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.